Hey everyone, it's great to have you back at the Sampleist, and my name's Greg, and today we're diving into the world of Cinematic Guitars Ultra from Sampleist. Hot on the heels of its most recent release, Ultrasphere, Sampleist has released a new guitar-inspired synth using their new proprietary sample engine. There's no need for any third-party software such as Contact with Cinematic Guitars Ultra. All you need to do is install the plugin, load it up into your DAW, and you're good to go. You'll need to set aside just shy of 22 gigabytes to install this one. At the time of shooting this video, it's on intro price of $299.99 and will soon return to its normal retail price of $399.99. Be sure to stick around for my composition, and I'll show you not only how I created it, but some helpful tips and tricks to take away for you to use in your other compositions. Don't miss that one. My thanks go to Sampleist for kindly making a copy of the product available for today's review. That said, they haven't had any input at all into this video because we highly value our independence at the Sampleist, so you can get unbiased and unfettered opinions. Before we get started, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the Sampleist so you won't miss the next in our ongoing series in the world of virtual instruments. With that out of the way, let's dive right into the sonic world of Cinematic Guitars Ultra. Welcome in everybody, this is Cinematic Guitars Ultra, and for those of you who are fans of this channel, you may recognize this interface if you've seen my earlier video on Ultrasphere, also from Sampleist. They've created this new Sampleist engine, and now they've turned their attention to using content from sampled guitars. So if you're familiar with Ultrasphere, you will be familiar with this interface. So my agenda for today is twofold. Yes, I'm going to show you obviously an overview of how the engine works, and also some presets, have a look at them, and we'll look at a composition that I wrote using Cinematic Guitars Ultra. But in principle, I'm not going to go into a deep dive of the engine itself for two primary reasons. One, will be here forever because it is a very rich and complex machine if you would like to get into the weeds. Secondly, Sampleist have already done just that, so there wouldn't be much value in me replicating what they've already done, and they'll do it far better than I could as well. So before we dive right in and get under the hood, let's take this puppy out for a bit of a run and see what she sounds like straight out of the box. So let's discuss the primary features of the engine. As I mentioned earlier, I won't go through each one in detail because it's already been done. And for the sake of brevity, I'll point you to what I believe are the main pillars of the engine. In principle, the engine consists of 4 different bays representing 4 core engine sources or sound sources in source 1 or core 1, core 2, 3, and 4 in each of the corners of the screen. In the middle panel, there is a number of tabs, but the central panel, when you see it by default, is an XY morphing pad that allows you to morph between each of the sources in the top left, top right, and bottom left. And you have the ability to select a number of set patterns that will actually allow you to, if I just put it on, I'll show you. So it moves, in this case, is a cross. Or you can have a star. So it's cross-fading across all those sources, and according to the pattern, you can, if you so desire, you can trace out your own custom-made patterns. Such that when you play it back, it will retrace out your particular pattern, of which you can save and keep for later. Clearing the path. The tab here, Mods, gives you access to the modifiers, so a series of LFOs that allows you, and key modifiers and velocity modifiers that allows you to attach these LFOs to various parameters within the engine to control their behavior. It comes with 2 arpeggiators, this one ARP1 and ARP2, again allowing you to arpeggiate some of the sound sources to create unique sounds. It has a chording device that allows you to set up effectively a 1-finger chord for each of your patches. And finally, an FX panel, which is global to the whole patch, that allows you to adjust the EQ, tape delay, there's 3 inserts, if you like, of which you can select from an array of effects. This particular one has a tape delay, one called White Dwarf, but again, you can select up to 3 different inserted effects and adjust according to taste. Okay, returning back to the standard pad. So let's have a look at the band below. This bottom panel is a frequency shaper. It's a bandpass filter that allows you to adjust the frequency of each of the chords that are color-coded. 1 for blue, green is 2, that pink is 3, and the deeper pink again is chord number 4. So playing a chord, you can shape the frequencies. For each of the chords. You can also have a series of presets, 50-50. Sounds different to only 2, which sounds different to quadrants. Let's have a look at the other features, starting with the preset selection mechanism, which is a search bar at the top. By clicking on it, you reveal this menu. All the presets are listed in the right-hand panel, of which there is plenty to choose from. Each of the presets have been categorized by a tagging mechanism where you can search for example, bowed instruments from a nylon quality that are metallic, and it will filter out all the patches, that match your particular qualities you're after. Having chosen one, you can then add it to your favorites, which then when you go back into your menu and select your favorites, let's clear all the tags, go to your favorites, you'll see all your favorites are saved there. You can edit the tags so you can reclassify them, and you can remove them from your favorites, etc. You can even save all your tags and create your own customized organizational system. For my money, I find this method quite not intuitive. For example, if I'm looking for a low thumping bass guitar-ish sound, if you like, or a bass synth, there's nothing here that tells me that that quality exists. I don't always know what spatial means, or what do I mean by fast motion, or maybe acoustic. Yeah, I get, but some of the tag ideas don't really allow me to navigate and find what it is I'm after. Also, a little bit frustrating too, I thought, was that despite having what appears to be like a mechanism, I don't think there's any mechanism or ability to be able to type in your selection criteria. So let's say if I knew I had one called fully equipped, or in a previous session, let's say Plastic Fortune, I can't search for it. So when I wanted to bring up that one that I liked, if I haven't favorited it, I've got no mechanism to actually go looking for it other than just eyeballing the entire lot one by one. So having a grouping mechanism that could filter by, say, alphabetical name, or search for a sort of a name. So for example, if I was looking for something, I thought it's called Dirty Thunder. Yeah, it's called Dirty Thunder, and I went to try and type it in, and I could type in THUND, and it would find Dirty Thunder for me. We don't have that ability here, so that's a little frustrating. I think that could be improved on. Okay, continuing on with the rest of the features, this is the coolest function of all, the randomization function. So you have two options. You can randomize the preset. So as the name suggests, clicking this button goes and randomly selects a preset from those that are available. Or alternatively, you could keep the preset static, and you can randomly select the core sources. So returning to the core sources, because I didn't discuss this a little earlier, within each of the sources in each of the corners, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can choose by clicking here each source for that particular core. Also, for example, for core 1, use this one called Papoose Clean, and the second one I might choose Outlander. You get the idea. So you can choose your own sound source. Well, there's another rich dimension of possibilities. So for each preset, you can create an almost infinite number of combinations of the various sources. Okay, so returning to our randomization function again, as I said, you can randomize the preset, but you can also randomize the core. If they are highlighted, which means if you click the randomization button, it will randomly insert a new sound source for each of the cores. If you want to keep one of those core sources static, you can deselect it and it will not be part of the randomization. So this one here, if I randomize, it will only randomize core 1 and 2. One of my favorite features, that is indeed, because for me, these cores and the parameters that are available are rich and diverse. And I'll be honest, I don't always understand exactly what each of these things can do. But if you're a deep synth nerd and you love this sort of stuff, you can tweak away. For me, having a randomization function is a wellspring of creative possibilities. You can also have a humanize button where you can change some of the saturation and the timbre and the pitch and the threshold of the master limiter, etc., to humanize your selections a little more. Because, in a sequencer engine, sometimes your selections can sound a little robotic, so it's nice to put a little bit of human touch in there. You can also, here's where you can set up all your different settings, the UI zoom factor, the streaming mode, etc., but also controlling which CCs, manage your XY pad and all your chord trigger actions, etc. That's where all your settings are kept. And finally, down the bottom is a little bit of eye candy, which gives you a choice between a spectrogram or a goniometer or an oscilloscope, so you can see the frequency of your sound sources working out. It's worth noting too that Each of the chords themselves have exactly the same parameters as we've outlined, including an EQ. So you can adjust the EQ for that particular chord source. But when you when you click over to the master effects chain, you've also got the master chain of effects that we touched on earlier. I told about the different insert types you can have, different effects, but you've also got a master EQ that allows you to adjust the EQ of your entire patch. Phew, that's a lot there for you to dive right into. I hope I've just given you a whirlwind fire and brimstone tour of the core features of Cinematic Guitars Ultra. Let's head on over now. I'm going to show you a quick composition I came up with that uses Cinematic Guitars Ultra, and then I'll show you about the composition process and how I arrived at the decisions that I did. Let's head over there now. So let's have a look at how the composition hangs together and the thought process behind it. Hopefully I can share some tips with you on how I came to these decisions. So I've used 5 instances of Cinematic Guitars Ultra. And because CG Ultra is effectively a synthesizer derived from guitars. Guitars obviously have a certain frequency range in the middle to upper register, if you like. They don't have a lot of bottom end. So I've called in some assistance in the lower end with some pulsing basses and some risers and some big epic drums that you heard. I've also called in a little bit of quiets for a middle eight there to break it up a little bit. But for the most part, it's all anchored around the Cinematic Guitar Ultra. You can see here in blue. How I started, I think, like I normally do, I just noodle around. And in this particular case, excuse me, let's go for this one here. I had a patch called Modal Hobbits. Cycling from an A minor to an F major to a D minor and finishing on an E major. So the whole track is nothing more sophisticated than those 4 chords. And for the most part, for the sake of brevity and urgency, I've chosen to stick with just standard patches. I haven't really manipulated any of the patches. I find that CG Ultra has such a deep breadth of possibilities that you have ultimate flexibility, but if you just want to smash something out pretty quick, then obviously you can stick with the standard patches as I've done here. Additionally, I've taken, to support that sequence, I chose to write up a little ostinato. So literally I played in these parts and I cleaned it up afterwards because my keyboard playing's not that crash hot. But again, it's just an ostinato in A minor to F major to D minor to E major all the way through to provide the support. I think it's also worth bearing in mind too that nothing sophisticated at the moment, but it's worth having a look at the automation. And in the automation here, in this case, I like to use some sustain pedal here, especially as I'm changing between chords because I'm a hack piano player. My hands don't move terribly quickly, so I'll sit on the sustain pedal just here in the middle, as you can see. And that just allows me to change chords quite easily. I don't think there's anything over in here, is there? No, not for the moment. So let's hide all the automation, and that cycles through. And then at this point here, I've brought in a little piece from an instrument called Mobius, which provides us with just a bit of rhythmic pulsing, nothing more. You can hear we're going to build it up. I introduced down the bottom some pulsing basses. But perhaps more interesting from our point of view here, same idea, I've used something called roll that dice. Just cascading melody on top of the chords. And here comes the big drop. Well, it would do if I played everything. All right, so of course we come through here. Let's add a bit of a drop after that. So that's obviously a big drop. I've just chosen a riser. I've upped the pulsing bass. I've dropped in some low percussion. To give you an idea of the percussion behind it, it just goes like this. It helps us keep the motion, but at the start of the show, I've just repeated the same patterns. We go back to the start of the sequence, and here I've chosen to do more of a Cinematic Guitars Ultra, a patch called Roll That Dice. Is that right? Let me have a look. I beg your pardon. It's this one here, I think. Cutting Teeth, which is a lead patch. So if you go here, you can check out all the lead pads of which this category, this particular patch comes from. And hey, just sort of basically hit record and hit some lead. Let's see how it goes. Where are we going to go now? Drop in the big drop. Let's bring in some choirs, sopranos. Ably supported by a Dio's Lacrimosa. Building up to a big drop. All right, so before we go to there, you might have heard that little bit here with the soprano voice. If I could just show you here, I'll just get to the choirs. The stutter. So that was a bit of fun. So how did we do that? So how I created that little stutter effect was quite simple. So these two choir patches, or tracks rather, are channeled down into a group track just for all the choirs, so I can control all the choirs from there. And in this particular case here, if you open up the automation for it, you'll see two tracks. One is called a chopper speed and the other one is a bypass function. So essentially, opening up the track for it, I just inserted a very simple, basic effect that comes with Cubase called Chopper that just allows you to manipulate the frequencies in and out. You can change the depth, the speed, whether it's a sine wave or a square wave, etc. I played around with it until I found something that allows you to chop things up. So all I did was that when I came to the point that I wanted to, here, see this sloping curve here? That's my automation to change the speed of the actual chopping rate. So you'll hear it go here. And down the bottom, I had to have a mute button because I didn't want it to chop the signal while it wasn't there. And I turned it on at this point, and then I turned it off. So some simple automation just to create that effect, which I thought just adds a little bit of a touch. And we go back into the track. So it's all hands to the wheel. It's thudding, thumping, pulsing basses and low perk. I've doubled the perk. A quick little tip what I did with the percussion, I doubled the track. And then what I did, I won't go into it, but effectively I've left panned one side and then I've right panned the other to give it some width. And then I think what I did was did I do it in this instance? I think if I have done it, I can't find it here at the moment, but what I did was I just changed the MIDI up a little bit. So actually, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, if you look really, really closely, I'll show you the left one. The left one is dead on. I've cut it here, so it's exactly on the bar marker here, 36 and 38. But the right channel, if you look very closely, might just zoom in here. Notice how I've got it slightly off. So it gives a slightly delay, a flamed effect, if you like, where I've got the left channel dead on the bar and the right percussion is ever so slightly behind it, if you like. So it gives it more of a bigger. So hopefully those two tips together might give you some bigger sounds. Cool with all that done. Like I said, it's a big crushing wall of sound on the way in. And this was, I'm not the world's greatest keyboard player, so I hit record again and I just did some freeform lead. As you can see here, I've cleaned it all up, and trust me, I spent probably half an hour cleaning it up. As I said, my keyboard playing skills isn't that great, so I've handcrafted a little bit along the way, but it just gives you that sort of... Using the Ultra Lead, the cutting teeth track. Some automation at the end just to take it out. And the automation is controlling the XY pad of here. If I have a look at the cutting teeth, I'll show you here. I teed up these two particular midis, 21 and I think it was 13. What have I got? Let's have a look. 21 and 16 to control the X and Y pad. And if you have a look here, as the automation kicks in, you'll see the XY pad. And then additionally, I also changed the modulation, which was changing the frequency. So altogether, it just helps it fade out. Cool. So there you have it. Bring it all together. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it. I had a bit of fun playing with this one because this is not my normal genre. It's not my strong suit by any stretch of the imagination. But Cinematic Guitars Ultra provide a lot of flexibility, a lot of big synthy guitar sounds, some pulses, and ably supported with some choirs to break it up, and of course some big epic drums and pulsing basses if that is your thing. So we're in the home straight. Let's wrap up the video. I'll give you my final thoughts and then we'll wrap up today's video. Cinematic Guitars Ultra is an expansive offering that has recorded a deep sample set of source guitar content together with an unparalleled richness of synthesizer tools, parameters and other sound design possibilities. This is rich and deep enough to ensure an almost limitless set of sound design possibilities for trailer, advertising and music production. The UI is well designed and doesn't try to hide its synthesizer heritage with a cornucopia of knobs and buttons galore. Given the depth of tweakability possible, the layout is quite well designed and compact. In this sense, the randomize function is most welcome. I personally like to see improvements in the preset search functionality. I couldn't use a simple word search to find the presets by name that I'd liked, meaning that I had to try and find it with one of the tags or look through the presets manually until I found it. And I didn't think it was obvious what the tags meant, making it harder to find something I wanted quickly. As an aside, an option to preview sounds would be great. Then a simple double click would load it and close the preset selection window, rather than relying on manually doing so each time. In a next incarnation, I think the library would benefit from sample sources from bass guitars to provide a richer set of options across the frequency spectrum. Because they use mostly conventional guitars, many patches are in the upper treble range, or at best maybe a baritone with some pitch shifting. As for bang for buck, even at an intro price of $300, much less its normal price of $400, it's going to be a stretch for most musicians. In my humble opinion, it doesn't provide the impact it needs for that price point. The market for comparable synths offerings is too strong to hold that price bracket convincingly without something truly unique. And that's a wrap on our video for today. As always, many thanks for spending some time with me to explore SampleLogic's Cinematic Guitars Ultra. On the way out, you can help the video by giving it a like to share the love with other musicians just like you and me. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell and you'll be fully armed and at the forefront of the latest news and reviews from the world of virtual instruments. This is Greg Revell signing off for The Sampleist, and as always, wishing you all the best on your journey to find your sounds and find your soul. See you on the next one.